Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best junglers for patch 6.13. So first up is going to be Volibear. Volibear did get a nerf to his W. It was either last patch or it was this patch, but that really didn't affect him too much at all. He can still deal a ton of damage in mid to late game teamfights while basically building full tank. Recently, I've been trying out Ghost on Volibear, and I was actually quite surprised at how good the summoner is on him. It does actually have a better win percent right now than Flash does, so if you haven't tried out Ghost on Voli, I would definitely recommend it. The amount of movement speed that you have when you have your Q active, your Ghost up, Swifties, and Deadmans, it's just absolutely insane. It's so hard to kite a Volibear if you do have Ghost, and because it is on a shorter cooldown than Flash, it means that you're going to be able to get more effective ganks off in the early game, because Ghost is like half the cooldown of Flash, so whenever you do have that up, you can definitely pull off a really good gank with Volibear. If you haven't tried it out yet guys, then I would definitely recommend it. He does have really good crowd control in his kit as well, with the slow on his E and the flip with his Q. His clear speeds are probably some of the best for any jungler in the game as well. He basically takes no damage in the jungle because he has that like 2 or 3 second fear with his E, so that just allows him to stay really healthy and clear out the jungle really quickly. He's pretty good at all stages of the game too. He's got his passive, so it makes him really hard, or it makes it really hard for enemies to duel him in the early game, and once you do get to late game, you've got your passive and Spirit Visage, and it just makes him pretty much unkillable. The amount of tank stats that you have with Volibear is just really insane. And a few cons to him are that he can get kited pretty easily. If the enemy team does lock someone like a Vayne 80 carry, then I would not pick Volibear in that situation, because come late game, you could get kited really easily and just get outscaled. And he is also very predictable. When you're playing volley, you just basically want to run at them and flip them, so it is very easy to predict what you want to do. Next up is going to be Sejuani. So you guys are going to see like this list is a lot of tank junglers, and the reason why is because we are seeing a lot of more carry top laners being played right now. Top laners that don't usually build like full tank, they go more damage. So having a tank in the jungle right now is definitely what you want to have most of the time. And Sejuani is definitely one of the best tank junglers in the game. She does benefit from those Cinderhulk buffs that did happen a few patches ago. She actually does quite a bit of damage as well for basically building full tank. She's kind of like Volibear. She doesn't do as much damage, I would say, as Voli does, but she can definitely put out some good damage if you do end up going Liandry's on her. Her crowd control and her team fight is some of the best for any jungler as well. A good ultimate in a team fight with Sejuani can basically just win your team the team fight, and if it is late game, then it could end up winning your team the game. She also does have pretty good mobility with her Q, and she does have that percentage health damage with her W, so it just makes her a pretty strong dueling champion as well once you do get a few items on her. And a few cons to Sej are that she does have a weaker first clear, and she can get out dueled in the early game by some of the stronger early game junglers, so when you are playing her in the early game, just make sure you do ward to make sure that you don't get invaded, because if you fall behind, then you are going to be a little bit weaker. Next up is going to be Fiddle. So Fiddle this patch is actually quite strong because we are seeing a lot of junglers being played that just want to dive onto the back line and get to the 80 carry. Now when you're playing Fiddle, if you're playing against someone like a Rengar or a Kha'Zix or even a Hecarim, if they try to dive your 80 carry, you can just fear them and then burst them down before they can even do anything else. So because we are seeing a lot of dive champions being played right now, I think that Fiddle is definitely a very strong pick. He does have a great team fight as well and very strong crowd control. One good Fiddle ultimate, kind of like a Sej ultimate, could end up winning your team the fight or end up winning your team the game. He's got the silence with his E, which is also the AoE silence, so that just makes his team fight really strong, and if you can get that off on a few targets, then that could ultimately end up winning you the fight as well. His passive is pretty strong as well now, because when you are channeling your ultimate, you're going to get that burst of movement speed after you do use your ult, so I find that most of the time I don't even have to flash now to get onto my target with Fiddle. It's always a good idea, like if you're in a mid to late game team fight and you're not like right next to your opponent when you do use your ultimate, then it is a good idea to still flash just so you can secure that kill. But if you know the enemy does not have flash, then most of the time you won't even have to use it now. One con to Fiddle is that his ultimate can be a little bit of a hit or miss ability. I find that when I'm playing Fiddle, if the enemy team is smart, then they'll keep wards down and they'll keep pinks, and it's just really hard for you to get good ultimates off if the enemies do know how to play against you. But as long as you can like buy a sweeper on Fiddle, keep your jungle like cleared out from wards, then you can definitely be very successful on him. Next up is Skarner. So right now, Skarner is pretty much my go-to jungler. I really like that he does do a lot of damage while still being really tanky. He's kind of like a Volibear, but I like him a little bit better than Voli just because he does provide a bit better crowd control with his E and his ultimate, and his ultimate is basically a guaranteed kill on whoever you get it off on in a mid to late game team fight or when you are ganking. His early game is pretty strong. Once you do hit level 6 as Skarner, you're basically guaranteed a free kill wherever you do gank, and I've been taking Ghost on Skarner like I do on my Hecarim and on my Volibear, and in the early game you can pull off some really good ganks. As long as you can land your E, then you're basically guaranteed to burn the enemy's flash, so I would definitely recommend going the Ghost on Skarner as well. He does have the shield with his W, and he's got the AoE clears with his Q, so that just allows him to stay really healthy in the jungle while also being able to clear it out quite fast. And he is a pretty strong dueling champion too. Once you get to the late game as Skarner, and if the enemies try to duel you in your shrines, then you're probably going to win that every single time. And he's also one of those junglers who really only needs to build one damage item. I only go Trinity Force on Skarner, and then I basically go full tank after that, and you can still deal so much damage with him. A few cons to Skarner are that he can be countered by disengage, so I usually don't pick him if the enemy has locked Janna or if they've locked Gragas, because in that situation it's going to be hard for you to get onto the back line and ult your high priority target. And he can also get invaded easily in the early game because he is going to be taking Ghost, unless of course you do want to take Flash on Skarner, which is also a good summoner choice as well. But overall, if you do take Ghost on him, then just be careful in the early game. Make sure you ward so that you don't get killed by someone like a Lee Sin or a Rengar. And to round out the top 5 for this patch, it's going to be Hecarim. So Hecarim is just an insanely strong pick right now for the jungle. After the Ghost changes and after the Trinity Force changes, he's been one of the strongest junglers for sure. He does have really strong ganks in the early game with his Ghost and his E active. He can just easily get behind the opponent, and he's basically guaranteed to burn their flash every single time. His mid to late game teamfight is really strong as well. His ultimate provides really good mobility and really good crowd control, and it just makes it super easy for him to dive onto that back line. Because we are seeing a lot of immobile AD carries right now, like Misfortune, Ashe, and Twitch, Hecarim is a great pick against them because his ultimate, you just dive the back line. You can basically one-shot them if you do get ahead with Hecarim because he does do a lot of damage as well. And he's pretty good at all stages of the game. He really doesn't have a weak point to the game. As long as you can like stay even in the early game and you don't fall behind, then you're going to be very successful on him. His clears in the jungle are great as well. He's got the sustain with his W, and he's also got the nice AoE damage coming out from his Q. And he really only needs like 1 or 2 damage items to be successful. He's like Skarner in the sense that Trinity Force is really the only damage item you need on him, and then you can go full tank after that and still deal so much damage. A few cons to Heck are that he can get invaded in the early game like Skarner because he is going to be taking Ghost, and he also is pretty weak if you do fall behind with him. You want to be looking for those engages, you want to be diving on the back line with Hecarim, and if you fall behind with him, then you're not going to be able to do that. So first up on the honorable mentions is going to be Zac. So I was actually thinking about having Zac on my top 5 for this patch. I've just been playing against so many good Zac players recently, and I feel like he's another good like Cinderhulk tank jungler who also does quite a bit of damage. So if you're a good Zac player, then I would definitely recommend picking him for this patch. Next up is going to be Kha'Zix. So like I said at the start of the video, we are seeing a lot of carry top laners being played right now, top laners that don't usually build full tank. So playing Kha'Zix in the jungle is maybe not the best idea for this patch because you're going to be really squishy, or your team's going to be really squishy come mid to late game. And if you're playing against an enemy team who does have like a Sejuani jungle or who does have like a tankier jungler, then you're probably going to get outskilled come the mid to late game. So if your team is lacking damage and you want to play Kha'Zix, Fiddlesticks, I would definitely recommend it, but if your team already has like a damaged top laner, damaged mid laner, then in that situation, I would not pick him. Next up is actually going to be Twitch jungle. Now you guys might think this is troll, or you might think that this is not a good pick at all, but right now, according to op.gg, which is a site that tracks like win rates and stuff, Twitch jungle has the highest win rate for any jungler right now, and I find that kind of surprising, but I can kind of see where it comes from. The Blood Razor right now is just a really strong item on him. Once he gets Blood Razor, Runanes, and Ghostblade, he deals so much damage in mid to late game teamfights, and if you do go to late game as Twitch, then you're going to deal so much damage in those teamfights, and you can solo carry really hard. His level 2 cheese ganks are also really strong. You can get a nice snowball going in the early game with him if you do gank at level 2, so definitely look to do that. Take your camp or take your buff and then go either top lane or bot lane and just try to get first blood, because it is actually quite easy to do on Twitch. Next up is going to be Vi. So Vi is actually in a pretty good spot right now, in my opinion. She hasn't been buffed or nerfed recently, and with a lot of the junglers like recently getting nerfed, she is definitely rising in power a little bit now. She does have really strong ganks in the early game with her Q. Her ultimate is kind of like a Skarner ultimate, but maybe even a little bit better. It's basically guaranteed to pick up a kill wherever you do gank at level 6. So overall, Vi is a pretty strong pick. The Trinity Force changes are also great on her, and she really only needs that one damage item to be successful as well. Next up is Gragas. So Gragas is another one of those good tank junglers. He also does do a pretty good damage with his W and his Q. His initiation is probably one of the best for any junglers in the game as well. Once you can get his engage down and once you can hit his ultimate successfully, then you can definitely do very well on Gragas. He's not one of my go-to junglers just because I do find that I mess up on his ultimate just way too often, and I just can't get the knockback into my team when I need to with him. So if you know how to play him correctly and you're confident in landing your ultimates, then I would definitely recommend playing him for sure, but if not, then try out one of the other junglers. And what would one of these jungle videos be without having Amumu at the last spot for the honorable mentions? So Amumu has stayed just a really strong pick in the jungle for such a long time. He's a low elo stomper champion, so if you are in like bronze, silver, or gold, then I would definitely recommend picking up Amumu as one of your main junglers. His teamfight is really strong with his ultimate. He's got great engage as well with his long range Q, so overall Amumu is still a great pick and probably will be a great pick for a very long time. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you guys have not already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.